1. Anthony Kirkland. Anthony Kirkland, a convicted serial killer in Cincinnati, Ohio, openly acknowledged his actions by stating, "I am evil and a monster, they're right. Even my mom hated me, but I don't blame her." Kirkland had previously served a 16-year prison sentence for the killing of his ex-girlfriend. After his release, he embarked on a killing spree over a 3-year period, claiming the lives of 4 women, including 2 teenagers. Kirkland's arrest came after his 4th murder, as he was found in possession of one of the victim's watch and iPod, making him a prime suspect. Subsequently, police were able to link all the murders to Kirkland. During court proceedings, as the charges were read out, Kirkland faced the death penalty and appeared to faint at one point. Ultimately, Kirkland was found guilty on all charges, including aggravated murder, and was sentenced to death. He is currently on death row, awaiting execution at the Chillicothe Correctional Facility. The case involved a chilling confession, a string of murders, legal proceedings, and the subsequent death sentence for Kirkland. 2. Christopher McNabb. Christopher McNabb faced charges for the murder of his 2-week-old child in Covington, Georgia. The child's mother reported the baby missing, prompting an immediate search by local law enforcement. On that night, McNabb was captured on TV cameras pleading for the return of his child, expressing desperation. However, the next day, the child's lifeless body was discovered in a nearby wooded area, with blunt force trauma to the head determined as the cause of death, later ruled a homicide. Subsequently, McNabb was arrested and charged with the murder of his own 2-week-old baby. Following his guilty verdict, the sentencing phase began. McNabb vehemently maintained his innocence, proclaiming that he would never commit such a crime. In an unusual turn of events, the judge allowed McNabb to unknowingly propose his own sentence, asking him what punishment someone claiming innocence should receive. McNabb suggested the maximum sentence, and the judge, on the charge of malice murder, sentenced him to life in confinement without parole. Following this, McNabb was transferred to Hayes State Prison in Georgia, where he is currently serving his life sentence. The tragic case exposed the heinous act of a parent against their own child, leading to a maximum penalty imposed by the judicial system. 3. Camia Gamet. Camia Gamet faced charges in the murder of her boyfriend in Jackson, Mississippi. The incident reportedly occurred during an argument between the two, resulting in the violent stabbing death of the boyfriend. Gamet was arrested on first-degree murder charges, and during the court proceedings, she claimed self-defense, arguing that her boyfriend was attacking her. However, despite her assertions, she was ultimately found guilty of murder. As the sentencing phase began, Gamet repeatedly interrupted the judge, displaying a lack of remorse. The judge, in response, made a stern statement about the violent nature of the crime, stating that Gamet had stabbed her boyfriend until he was dead. The judge harshly expressed his agreement with the family's sentiments, expressing a hope that Gamet would die in prison. Despite not being in a death penalty state, Gamet received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The case highlighted the severity of the crime, and the judge's strong words reflected the impact of Gamet's actions on the victim's family. 4. Franklin Williams. Franklin Williams faced conviction for various felonies, including armed robberies and eluding the police in Cleveland, Ohio. During a court proceeding, Williams continually interrupted the proceedings despite numerous warnings from the judge. In response, the judge ordered Williams's mouth to be taped shut. In a subsequent court appearance, Williams made a statement about freedom of speech while holding a piece of duct tape with hashtags. Despite the interruptions, the judge proceeded to hand down a potential maximum sentence of 103 years. But Williams ultimately received a 24-year prison sentence. The initial judge later apologized for the use of duct tape and nullified the sentence. A new judge was appointed, who sentenced Williams to 33 years behind bars. The case highlighted the disruptive behavior during court proceedings and the subsequent adjustments in sentencing. 5. Keandrea Cook. Meet Keandrea Cook, who was convicted of carjacking charges in Volusia County, Florida. At the age of 18, Cook, along with her then 17-year-old boyfriend, orchestrated a carjacking using a dating app. During the incident, the boyfriend reportedly shot the victim, causing severe injuries. After fleeing the scene, the duo attempted another carjacking just 2 days later, leading to their arrest. In court, Cook faced charges related to the theft and shooting and pleaded guilty to all 3 counts. She received a 20-year sentence in state prison. Cook's mother can be heard wailing with pain in the courtroom, as there was a miscommunication with the assistant public defender, leading them to believe that Cook wouldn't face any prison time. Subsequently, Cook's sentence was later reduced to 11 years in prison. The emotional outburst in court highlighted the impact of miscommunication on the defendant and her family during the sentencing process. 6. Kimberly Kessler faced charges in the murder of her co-worker in Nassau County, Florida. Kessler had been working at a Tangles hair salon under a false name. She had reportedly been on the run for 25 years, wanted in multiple states, and managed to evade authorities until she brutally murdered her co-worker with scissors and allegedly disposed of the body. After her arrest, Kessler was seen awaiting trial, and her behavior in jail included disturbing actions such as removing feces from trays and smearing them on the walls. During the trial, Kessler's disruptive behavior continued, leading to her being placed in a separate room due to her outbursts. She made false claims about her former public defender, Jordan Beard, who was revealed to be Jolene Cummings's cousin. Ultimately, Kessler was found guilty of first-degree murder and received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The case underscored the gruesome nature of the crime and the challenges faced during the legal proceedings due to Kessler's erratic behavior. 7. Ignacio Rodriguez, the suspect in the death of his 4-month-old son in San Antonio, Texas, allegedly caused the child to suffer a fractured skull and profuse bleeding to the brain. Rodriguez, identified as the lead suspect, was taken into custody. In court, Rodriguez faced a capital murder charge but opted to plead guilty to a lesser charge of intentional or knowing injury to a child causing serious bodily injury. During the plea hearing, the judge asked Rodriguez for his plea, to which he responded with a guilty plea. The judge then handed down a sentence of 50 years of confinement. A poignant moment occurred when the baby's mother confronted Rodriguez. She spoke about their other child, saying when she gets older, he will start asking questions. Rodriguez interrupted the grieving mother, insisting that she tell the truth to their daughter as she grows older. He repeated this over and over as he was swiftly removed Rodriguez from the courtroom. He is currently serving his 50-year prison sentence. The case involved a plea deal, a significant sentence, and a heartfelt moment between the mother and the accused in court. 8. Damon Kemp. Damon Kemp faced charges for the double murder of his roommates in Daytona Beach, Florida. The police were initially called to investigate a burglary at an apartment complex, and during this investigation, Kemp allegedly confessed to the murders. The victims, his 2 roommates, were shot multiple times in their apartment. At Kemp's bond hearing, he was brought into court in a wheelchair, screaming the word God at the very top of his lungs. The judge attempted to address Kemp, but he completely ignored the judge's attempts. The proceedings became difficult for the victim's family, prompting them to walk out. Currently, Kemp is held in the Volusia County Jail, awaiting his trial. The case involved a confession, a courtroom appearance, and the emotional impact on the victim's family during the legal process. 9. Jacob Morgan. Jacob Morgan, at the age of 17, was convicted of starting a house fire that resulted in the death of a family member in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Morgan was entrusted with the care of his 14-month-old stepbrother when, as prosecutors argued, he intentionally set the fire that proved fatal for the family member. During a probable cause hearing, the judge addressed the charges against Morgan. Subsequently, Morgan opted for a plea deal, pleading guilty to involuntary manslaughter and unlawful neglect of a child. Despite his guilty plea, he consistently professed his love for his brother and maintained his innocence. As a result of the plea deal, Morgan received a 15-year prison sentence. However, after serving only 7 years, he was reportedly released. The case involved a tragic incident, legal proceedings, and the subsequent release of Morgan after a partial completion of his sentence. 10. Erica Butts and Shanita Cunningham. Erica Butts and Shanita Cunningham faced charges of homicide by child abuse in Summerville, South Carolina. The victim was a 3-year-old toddler, and Butts, who was the child's mother's best friend, was supposed to care for her for 2 weeks. Tragically, the child died from injuries indicative of weeks of torture, a period aligning with her time spent with Butts and her partner at the time, Cunningham. After both women were found guilty, the judge handed down their sentence, stating that it was appropriate for each to be sentenced to the State Department of Corrections for life. Butts and Cunningham are currently serving their life sentences in separate prisons. The case involved a disturbing instance of child abuse, legal proceedings, and the subsequent life sentences for the convicted individuals. Of these 10 moments, which did you find to be the most unexpected? Let us know in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more videos.